If you've ever felt stuck between your big vision and your next move, this episode is for you. Today, I'm talking with Ashley Lynn Priore. Ashley isn't just playing the game differently, she's changing the rules entirely. She's a nationally recognized chess innovator, entrepreneur, and civic disruptor who has taken chess out of the game room and turned it into a global framework for leadership, equity, and bold decision making. She's the founder of Queen's Gambit, a nonprofit that's helped thousands of youth build confidence, leadership skills, and critical thinking through chess. And she leads Queenside Ventures, where she works with CEOs, athletes, and mission driven brands to help them think differently, communicate with clarity, and lead with precision. By the age of 25, Ashley had already launched 7 ventures, run for public office, and led the charge for a White House Youth Policy Council. She's the person leaders call when it's time to stop following the old playbook and build something entirely new. So, in our conversation today, we're going to talk about leadership, strategy, and what it really takes to grow a business or a movement, especially as a woman in spaces that weren't built for you. So, if you're feeling the weight of a big decision or you're at the point in your career where it's time to shift from expert to thought leader, this one's for you. So, thank you, Ashley. I am so excited. We have been chatting a lot lately, but I cannot wait to share our conversations with the world.
First, thank you so much for having me. But also, it's just so wonderful that we've been able to connect so much and just support each other's work. You're amazing. So I'm excited that we're here together.
Well, thank you. And right back at you. So, I always like to start with story, right? Your story is definitely not a traditional one, and you have accomplished a lot. You started teaching chess at 8, launched Queen's Gambit at 14, and now you're leading both a nonprofit and a consulting firm. So, can you just walk us through how this all came together and how chess became more than just a game for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love starting with the story, and it really is not a super traditional one. And that was something that I think always got me thinking a little bit differently, right? Because people would be like, "Oh, what do you do?" or "What's your journey been like?" And it's not a smooth way. It's really shifted and drifted. I started playing chess about age 4, and all my siblings had played. We would do competitive chess together. We had a childhood full of going to chess tournaments and competing and all of those things. And I loved it. I really did. But at the same time, for those that don't know, the chess community is so male dominated, especially white male dominated. And so growing up in that space, I decided like, we need to create something, a movement, something. At that point, I didn't know, but I was like, we need to create something where everyone feels like they belong. Because oftentimes, when you're the only woman in a room full of like 100 people, you don't see anyone that looks like you. It has a huge impact on how you interact and how you see the world. So I just started teaching chess. I said, this is the way I can get in. This is how I can start it. I started first teaching at my local library. I started doing private lessons. As I was teaching, I began to notice similar patterns. Men would often be like, oh, you're the chess teacher. They would ask questions, right? I would see girls and their parents and how they interact with their brothers. And the parents would say to the girl, oh, this is not going to interest you. Let's try something else. But the sons would always be invited to learn chess, right? I kept seeing this narrative. So in 2014, I started Queen's Gambit. And at the time, we were really focused on how do we create an environment where everyone has the opportunity to play chess, to learn chess, to engage in the game. As we've grown and we shifted, I really realized that this is more than just getting people to learn chess. This is the tools that chess provides. Chess provides so many critical thinking skills, strategic planning, adaptability, problem solving, confidence, all of these things. And we're in a world, and I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, we're in a world that's losing the art of critical thinking. We really are. We're in a world that's losing this ability to be more strategic. So I've decided that, Queen's Gambit needed to become this movement of let's inspire and engage young people to be critical, strategic thinkers. So as Queen's Gambit was growing and as I was doing all of these different things, at the University of Pittsburgh, where I went to college, I majored in English literature and political science. And I had always felt this strong interest in history, public policy, what does politics mean as a chess player? That really interests me. So I engaged in that a little bit. I had joined nonprofit boards. I was doing all of these things. But once I had graduated from Pitt, I remember I was meeting with my one mentor And I said to her, like, well, I guess now I'm supposed to find quote unquote like a traditional job. That's what all my siblings did. That's what I saw. And she looked at me and was like, what are you doing? Right. Because I had started to apply to jobs that I wasn't passionate about, I didn't care about. When meanwhile, I was already building a successful nonprofit. I was already doing all of this other work. So I decided to then dive into consulting because I had already been doing consulting. I just wasn't doing it as a business. So that's how Queenside Ventures had started. And I think the whole narrative throughout this is that I saw a problem, I saw a need, and I wanted to solve it, or at least put something in motion to help with it, right? Chess really became a vehicle in which I interact with the world. I mean, it started as something so simple, something I did on the weekends and tournaments, and it really evolved into every day I'm doing something chess related, playing a game, solving a puzzle, teaching somebody something. So chess really is very deep to me and provided me with really a framework for my whole career.
I absolutely love that because I think so many people would look at the game of chess and not think of it in that way. But when you start explaining more of the things that you saw and the patterns and critical thinking, gosh, that is just so important, especially with the age of AI. Like that skill is one we still need our children to learn, that we as adults still need to have. And so I love looking at it through a different lens. It's kind of become the whole framework for your career. And I think it's really cool that you've not only built your nonprofit around this, but also your for profit.
Mhm.
And so maybe lead us through what that looks like in terms of like, how do you, when you're working with a business or a sports team, I know you've worked with a lot of sports teams. How do you bring chess in and then equate it to what they're doing in their real lives?
Mm. And I think I might have mentioned this to you a little bit, but one of the things that I always struggled with talking about my brand and my movement was, really the power of chess. Like I would always talk about chess as if people knew exactly all of the amazing things that chess is and chess does. I would just assume people knew, right? When you're so passionate about something, you're like, people must know about it, right? And oftentimes they don't. So when I first started to make connections between chess and business strategy, chess and sports strategy, chess and communications and politics, all the things, I had to be very thoughtful about people are going to see chess. They're going to look at this and they're going to say, this is a board game. How does this apply to anything I'm doing in my day to day life? How's it even going to help me? I really had to do a lot of research on that because there's research out there about the benefits of chess. Chess literally grows the dendrites in your brain, and those dendrites in your brain lead to faster decision making. They lead to, there's that whole saying that chess makes you smarter. It actually does. It's growing parts of your brain that we often don't hit with normal types of strategy puzzles or board games or things like that. So I said, you know what? This is a great start. This is a great framework. We know that chess helps the brain, it helps make you smarter. If you are smarter and you can make more critical decisions and choices and know how to be a problem solver, that is going to help your career no matter what. So the first group that I took this approach with and strategy with, I had done it for youth for so long, but a lot of times the issues and things that youth were solving were very different than what a company or a business was solving. So the first group I worked with was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, partly because I had cold emailed a lot of NFL teams. I knew I wanted to get engaged in sports. I knew I wanted to work with some sort of sports team. I'm probably the biggest Tom Brady fan that is out there. And it was so cool that I could do that. And it was so cool. I was the first one. But the reason I got that was because when I reached out to them, I was very specific. I said, chess is all about anticipating your opponent's next move. If you don't do that, you're going to lose. Right? Similar in football. If you do not anticipate what your opponent is going to do, if you don't watch their previous games, if you don't study their players and their successes and their weaknesses, you're not going to win. So it's makes sense that we teach your guys chess because they're going to do that. They're going to automatically be starting to think like a chess player. They're going to think ahead. They're going to problem solve. They are not only going to learn teamwork, they're going to learn how to stand up for themselves, how to fight back, and how to adapt. because I was so specific and I knew football so well and I know it so well, I was able to make those connections. So that's how I pivoted. That's how I really said, this is the difference here. This is why chess is so important. I'm taking it to the next level. That's really how I approach it with any group I'm working with. I try to understand, what are they doing? What are they not doing? And how can chess elevate them to the next level?
Okay, I love this. And this is totally going to lead me in a little bit different direction than what I was planning. But I love when you say it about, being able to anticipate that next move and just think differently. Right. And I think so many of our listeners are women running businesses here. And so, part one of what I wanted to pull out of what you said is you were really specific in the way that you could help them.
Mhm.
And I think that's so important to us building businesses when there is so much noise and when there's probably so many people just what I think of it as like fighting for attention.
Yes.
Although I don't believe in competition, it's more about collaboration. But there's still that like fighting to be seen. And the more specific that you can be, I think the more that you're going to win.
Mhm.
It's going to put you ahead. And so, even I feel like then when it comes to chess and what you're doing, that's helping you as a business owner because it's just you're getting out of your comfort zone, you're doing something different and you're thinking differently. So I guess what advice would you have for our listeners that, you know, these women are ready to make their next big move?
Mhm.
They are ready to go outside of their comfort zone and scale in a way that feels good to them. How do you help them think differently about strategy?
I love this question because strategy is something that I think a lot of people throw the term around, right? And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm strategic. I'm doing all of these things. It's just a term that's thrown around a lot. For me, strategy, all it is a very specific plan of action to achieve your goal. And why so many people fail, and what I encourage everyone to do is understand, or what I say, take inventory. Understand what your current situation is. Oftentimes we're like, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and you don't have a good baseline. You don't know what pieces you have on your board. So truly what I do is I say, let's look at this chessboard right now. Right. And I say, let's understand how each piece moves, right? What if its limitations are? What are its abilities? How do those pieces align what's going on in your world or your life? What are some good things? What are some bad things, right? I know that you want to do X, Y, and Z. I had a woman that wanted to increase her business by X amount and start creating new services. And I said, well, let's understand what you're doing right now. What's going well and what's not. And we often found that it wasn't that she needed to create all of these new services. It was that she needed to be more specific about what she was currently offering because she had a great baseline. She just wasn't following through on that. So I say to anyone that's interested in strategy, that wants to make their next bold move, you need to understand where you are now. You need to do what I call unravel that canvas of your own personal chessboard, right? Because you have pieces in place. You just might not be using them right or using them to their fullest extent. Or you might need to sacrifice a few things in order to get the position that you want. If we miss that critical step, we're not going to have a good foundation. And if we don't have a good foundation, it could all fall apart just with one simple thing. I like to think of that comparison of any sort of building or structure, right? You want to keep going higher and higher, but if you don't have a solid starter foundation, all that work that you did is just going to come down, right? So that's
Mhm.
what I'd say to women. And I really want you to understand, what does your own chessboard look like? Because you can do that right now. You can understand that right now. And that's really a big, important step.
Yeah, and that hits home for me because I know I was in that zone where things were working really well. And I'm like, oh, well, I have to do new offers. I have to create new things. And so I started building, building, building and stopped focusing on what was actually working. Things started to fall apart because I didn't look at what's already working. How can I just make that better instead of building a new offer? I mean, for me, it was like I was launching a podcast and building a group offer and changing up my regular offers. And I had to stop and be like, okay, where are the priorities? Clearly, podcast, because it's launched, that was a priority
Mhm.
because I get to not only connect with amazing women like you, but help share your story and then impact more, right? It's a ripple effect. But then I went back to my original offer that was working really well and now trying to rebuild that back up. And so what you're saying like makes 100 total percent, like makes 100. I can't even say that. And sense. There's way too many common words there, but it makes sense to me. I'm going to just put it simple as that.
And oftentimes we feel like we need to rebrand or repivot, right? Things are going so well and we're like, wait, it's going so well. Things make sense. I have a schedule that fits. I'm doing all these things. And then it's like, wait, I need to do something else. We fall into that trap all the time. And I even see it on the chessboard, right? When I'm trying to engage competitive chess players and I'm helping them with their game, they're like, okay, the strategy's going well. I'm going to try something else, right? And that's when things start to fall apart a little bit. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you can't create the plan, but you need to understand what your priorities are and what's going to work right now. Because if you don't, right, you're not setting yourself up in the best way. You're not preparing yourself, right? I don't know if it's because, and I find this a lot with us as women, right? We're always doing things. We're doing so many different things. And we do so many things so well. But sometimes it's helpful if we're like, you know what? I'm doing these things. This is great. And I'm okay with that. Like we can stick with this for a while. I needed to do that for myself. When I was starting different businesses, I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I was like, wait, is this really fueling me? Like, do I feel confident and happy when I'm doing this? Or do I feel like I need to keep doing more? Because that's what people are telling me.
Gosh, which is so perfect, I think, in this conversation is because we are there. Like, I think we're multi-passionate. And
Yes.
I've heard people lately telling me, like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to get bored, right? Because I want to do all these things and I'm afraid that I'm going to get bored. So I want to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so for someone like yourself who has multiple businesses, how do you keep the balance? Or what would you say to other women who are thinking of expanding and growing?
Mm. Oh, I love that question. It took me a while to really feel like I had a good balance because everything with chess is so connected and related. For so long, people knew me as the youth empowerment person through Queen's Gambit. And I wanted to pivot my voice a bit and say, hey, youth empowerment's so important. I've been doing that, but I'm also doing all of these things too. So it was hard to feel like I was 100% at everything, right? It took me a minute. As I've started more businesses and really felt more grounded, I realized that it's because I was focusing more on the things that I just really love to do. Like, I'm so excited to meet with somebody and help them understand their personal chessboard. I'm so excited to talk with somebody about their own branding. I'm so excited to, help kids really understand, how chess can help them achieve these types of goals that they have, right? I really understood what fueled me. And I realized that you're going to see the difference. You're going to have that moment. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, where you're just loving the work that you're doing. I almost feel like we have to at some point not enjoy something. I don't know if that was just me, but I almost felt like I was like, this is going way too well. Almost that type of feeling, right? But I'd say, like, just settle for a minute in all of the good things that are happening and understand that, part of strategy and being a strategic leader is understanding, like, when you've hit the success, right? Sometimes we do the wrong thing with strategy where we get to a certain point, it's going great, then we get scared, and then we like fall back down a little bit, right? Be in that uncomfortableness for a little while. I'm sure you've experienced that too, right? I know I did, where it's like things are going well and they're like, wait, there's something else I should be doing. It all seems to be going too well.
And I think it's that space of then getting your voice out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I had somebody say to me once, we were talking about like building your business around your passion, kind of what you were talking about. And she's like, no, don't build your business around your passion. I'm like, wait, what? I did not agree with that because I believe in if we are passionate about something, if we 100% love what we do, it will help fuel us to the next level. People can see that. People can experience that you love what you do, and you're going to just make that ripple effect, make that bigger difference. But also, you're going to be more confident about being able to use your voice, build the platform, do the movement. Like I can see that when I talk with you. Like you are so passionate about it. And what you're doing is making a difference not only in the lives of youth, but also adults in a completely different way that anyone else is doing it.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you had mentioned that because when I was doing work or when I started a business that like it was solving a problem and I was somewhat passionate about it, right? But I wasn't super passionate about it. It was harder to sell. When you're in a business of doing something that you're not necessarily passionate about, you're not going to be that successful in my opinion because you just don't have that connection with it, right? I'm sure we've all been in jobs that maybe we don't love or we're not as excited about. It feels different. When you're in the job that you love, you're going to know it.
Yes, 100%. When you wake up excited, like, yes, there are still days when I'm like, there's a task I hate doing because
Yes.
like we do all the things, right? But I genuinely love not only what I do, but the people I get to serve and work with. And so I want to go back to a thing you had said we talked about in the beginning is that chess was usually a male dominated
Hmm.
space, right? And so you have built up this business in a space that is still pretty male dominated.
Hmm.
What have you learned maybe about claiming your power and holding your seat at the table,
Hmm.
especially when you're building that something maybe unconventional or
Hmm.
different?
It was always hard for me when I first started playing chess. Like I had said earlier, very male dominated. When I stepped into the nonprofit space in Pittsburgh, it is very older dominated. So I started to experience, we don't call it ageism anymore. Actually, there was a new word that I'm still, learning because when I had started, it wasn't called this, but it's called youthism. And
Mhm.
youthism is a term that's used to describe when people are questioning young people and their abilities, just like we see ageism all the time, right? People questioning people that are older, right? And we see it all with these generational divides. One thing that was really important to me was that intergenerational diversity component. So, intergenerational diversity meaning people from different age groups not only have a seat at the table, but they're interacting with each other. They're sharing ideas. They're being confident with each other. That is so different than multi-generational because multi-generational is when there's different seats at the table, but they're not interacting. That inner is really important. So I've experienced it all my life. When I first entered in the nonprofit space, sitting on my first board, people would judge me not only because I was a woman, because I was also a young woman, right? It took me a long time to realize that no matter what room you're going into, there's always going to be somebody that feels that way about you. That you're never going to enter a room where there's going to be nobody judging you, right? Somebody is always going to have that in the back of their mind. I had grown the confidence that I needed to say, you know what? Despite my age, despite anything, I know what I'm talking about. I've been successful. I know what I'm doing, right? And it was that confidence that shifted things for me, right? I talked more in meetings. I stood up for myself. I would even push back on certain things, right? And I find this especially in young women, especially I would say like between 20 and 30, right? They're getting into different spaces in the workforce, all these things, and they start to sort of hold back, even though that they know they're right, because they don't want to, rock the boat or do whatever. And I understand that. I did that too. But it changed so much when they said, you know what? I'm going to be confident and I'm right. And I'm going to stand up for myself. I hear women all the time when I'm doing leadership coaching. And I'm so glad you had mentioned this too, this concept of staying in your lane, right?
Mhm.
As a young person too, they'd be like, you're still in school. It's like, well, what actually is our lane? Because what does that mean? We all are going to connect in some way, right? We're all trying to achieve a common goal. We're all trying to do X, Y, and Z. Why are we staying on our lane when we could be helping each other? So my advice is always to women, to young people, to anyone that's feeling this way is to grow your confidence and realize that your words matter. You are important. You are needed. There's always going to be somebody that's going to be negative. We can't stop it. Even the most successful people in the world have the naysayers. But you need to understand that there is nobody like you and your experiences. And that's really important.
And I know that can be scary. Speaking from experience, and I'm sure the people that you have worked with as well, It sounds great, but how do you help them actually do that? Saying what they want to say in a meeting,
Mhm.
even if it's working with a difficult client or a difficult employee, like standing up for yourself, being heard, being seen. How do you help them like gain that
Mhm.
confidence?
Yeah, I love that. It was funny today. I was working with a woman who is in a very similar spot. She's a new director at a company, and she's just trying to get her team to, feel comfortable with her and respect her and all the things. And so we were talking. I said, do you really understand what your own inventory is? Like I had mentioned earlier. And she was like, well, no, I don't. So the first step I always tell women, especially when I'm trying to help them build confidence, is this concept of your personal chessboard. Let's understand all of your assets and your strengths and also your weaknesses. Because I know my weaknesses and I'm confident and I'm honest about that. So it's that combination of both, right? Starting off with taking inventory. Who are the players on the board, right? What do you do well? What don't you do well, right? And if you are confident in that you know your skill set so well, that is going to automatically build your confidence. I'll give an example here with the woman I mentioned earlier. She said, I'm so good at seeing a problem and solving it, but I'm also, one of my weaknesses is that I don't delegate and I don't share tasks. I try to do it all myself. She's like, I know I'm good at problem solving. So maybe instead of trying to solve everything myself, I can talk about it more with the team member and I can bring them into the conversation. She's like, so I'm balancing both the things. I'm really good at solving a problem. I can still do that. But one of my weaknesses is I don't delegate. So I'm going to start to delegate. It's just those small things. You're changing those small things, you're putting it into action. It is never easy to say to someone, okay, you should just be more confident because no, that's going to change. You might feel one confident 1 minute and not the next. It takes practice. It takes a long time. It certainly took me a long time. But I want people to understand their assets, right? What is really what do you feel like you do really well? What are some things you feel like you don't do well? Because confidence is all about you feel like you do more things negatively than you do positively. That's what I found, right? When somebody lacks confidence, they think they're automatically going to do the wrong thing, right? If we build up the part of them that feels positive and confident, that's going to make a world of difference.
I love looking at it from that way. So how do you help them when then, because I think we can all say all the things we're not good at, but it can be really hard sometimes to write the list of like
Oh,
what
yes.
we are good at. Because I know I'm like, well, what am I? Like not
Yeah.
wanting to boast about ourselves or talk about ourselves. And so once people maybe have that list, how do you help them see like these really are your strengths and work from that, not just your weaknesses?
One of my favorite activities is that at the end of the day, you write down three things that and you have to do the positive. Three things that went well that day. And I said, you can start off and not even say that you caused them to do well, but just write down three positive parts of the day. Something, right? Three positive things. And when we meet, I ask them to share with me each day, what were those things, right? If we're meeting weekly, every day for the week, like, what were those things? At the end, they're like, well, I listed all these things. And I said, okay, that's great. So if somebody told you that they had achieved all these things, what would you say? Or if it was your friend, what would you say? And they're like, well, I would say that's amazing. Like, I would say they did all these things well. And I'm like, okay. So give me the list. And I take the list and I just change a few of the words and language and I read it back to them. And I'm like, you did all of this. They're like, well, I don't know. It wasn't really, I had help. And I'm like, no, this was you. You took note and you said yourself, if this was a friend or somebody else saying all these things, you would say it's amazing. But as we continue to do that every week, I start to see the growth happening a little bit, right? It wasn't automatic, but they were like, well, yeah, I actually did do this. And yeah, I talked this client into this deal. And yeah, I raised this amount for my company. Or yeah, I worked through a really difficult sales situation, right? It's that slow momentum. It's really hard at first, but I really push them to say, look at the positive. If you have trouble with putting yourself in, put a name to it. Come up with some imaginary name. Like Sally did X, Y, and Z. Oh, that's so cool for that. Oh, yeah, that person is me, right? If it helps in the third person, that's one way to do it. I always encourage taking a look and doing that inventory at the end of the day. Some women and people in general might not have the confidence. And it's just something that struggled with for a long time and aren't able to achieve. So what I try to help them with in that moment is, what small wins can you take? What small wins can you take throughout the day? And it doesn't mean you need to be the most confident person ever, but what things can you say, you know what? Yeah, I did that well, right? Even today, we're sitting here doing a podcast together, right? We both did that well. We both took the time to do that. You're a busy mom. You have 4 boys, all the things, but you took the time to do this and interview people and come up with all of these amazing questions and be a host, right? It's those moments throughout the day I try to encourage people to take a look at.
Thank you for sharing that. I've been talking about that a little bit lately too, is like, you have to celebrate your wins. No matter how big or small, we have to celebrate, because so many times as women, as entrepreneurs, like, we just kind of say, hooray, and we move on to the next thing without actually realizing the stuff we're doing is big. We are changing lives, no matter how big or small it may be. It is important, and we need to celebrate that, because it's only going to help us do better and better and better and impact more people and change and grow along the way. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Mhm.
And 2 things before we round out the conversation. Before I forget, I want to make sure that we hit on, you have your Queenside Ventures, right? Where you
Mhm.
help adult
Mhm.
and leaders and sports teams. You also have your nonprofit, where we're talking about youth. And so maybe just share, if people want to work with you, or, it's not just learning about chess as we talk about, it's all the things that go with that, the critical thinking, the social emotional learning, like making decisions. It's all of the things. So where how can people work with you? What does it look like to have your organization come in on both sides of the
Mhm.
spectrum?
Yeah, I love this question because it really breaks down what I think is important for people to recognize with this work. With the nonprofit, with Queen's Gambit, if you are a youth serving organization and you want chess in your organization, or you want to reach more young people through chess, I always say reach out to us. If you are a parent and you want your child to get involved in chess, reach out to us. If you are yourself a young leader and you want to understand what does it look like to go out in the community and teach chess, reach out to us. Queen's Gambit is that vehicle of youth leadership. So anything related to young people and empowerment, we are here. If you want to reach out and just talk about strategies for engaging with young people, we want to hear, right? It doesn't just have to be about chess, but what makes Queen's Gambit so powerful is that we're always harnessing the power of chess to empower young people. Okay? So you're a parent, you're an organization, you're a young leader, reach out to Queen's Gambit. If you are a CEO, an athlete, a leader, an entrepreneur, somebody that's just in a moment of shifts and they need to pivot and look for their next move, reach out to us at Queenside. What I love about Queenside and what we've built on the consulting firm side is that not all of the possibilities are seen on the chessboard yet, right? So you tell us what you need. In one meeting, you tell us what's going on, and we might be the right fit, we might not be, but we can help you determine what's next. After one meeting, we can say, here's all the leadership development, communications, business strategy. Here's what we can help you with. But you might leave that meeting and say, what I really need help with is this over here. We can help get you in the right direction to find that person. We are here as the vehicle to help people unleash their chessboard. And that, in some way, is yes, absolutely, we want to work with you. But it might also mean that you might have your chessboard already. You just need that person, that contact to really take it to the next step. Okay. I always have people reaching out and they're like, I want to learn chess. What can I do? Feel free to reach out to me. You can go to qgchess.org or queensideventures.com. And if you just send me an email, it's just Ashley at queensideventures.com. I can give you resources in the community for groups that are teaching people chess, right? I always want to make sure people have the resources they need, because I guarantee you there's organizations in your community, if you're really interested in learning chess, that you can engage with, right? That's the number one question I get asked. Where can I learn chess? Or what are some of the best resources? So please reach out. We want to be helpful, but I'd say Queen's Gambit means youth. Queenside Ventures means personal chessboard.
Amazing. And I will have all of your links in the show notes that people can find and reach out to you because, gosh, what you're doing is just, I think it's so important. And it's such a different, non traditional way of looking at leadership and strategy and critical thinking that allows us to get like outside of the box and do something different. And it's so, so good for us. The big part of this podcast is called Success Unscripted because the definition really shifts and change as we grow. And
Mhm.
sometimes we get pulled into chasing someone else's version of success. So I always like to ask my people, what does it look like for you right now in this chapter of your life?
Mm. I would say right now it looks like as I'm continuing to grow Queenside, Queen's Gambit was the big part of age 14 through 24. Like that was my thing. And I grew it and it was expanding and I put everything I had into that. And now I'm on the other side of Queenside and I'm trying to grow that. So for me, success looks like continuing to get Queen's Gambit in a place where, we are successful, we're empowering youth, and we can go on to the next generation. For Queenside, it's getting chess in front of people and not having chess be this scary, intimidating game, but being something that you can use to empower yourself, right? As a canvas for expansive thinking. Success for me also looks like I'm doing work that fuels me and that I feel like I'm helping people and I'm giving back in some way. If you asked me when I was 20 what success looked like, I would say, well, it looks like raising X amount for this one small fundraiser we're doing for Queen's Gambit, or to get ourselves in this one newsletter so that people can learn more about our work, all of these things. And it's funny that it shifted because I still need all of that and we're still doing that, as you know, right? But at the end of the day, I want to feel like I helped somebody that day and I help them gain more clarity, gain more focus. That's what's important to me.
I love it. Well, thank you, Ashley, so much for sharing your story. And I think helping all of us and our listeners just think a little bit more boldly about leadership and just that different explanation of strategy, what it really means to make that next move. So, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on here today. And for anyone that wants to connect with Ashley and her work, whether that's Queenside Ventures or the Queen's Gambit, please go to the show notes, click the links, reach out to Ashley. I know that she will be there for you. So, thank you again.
Yes, thank you for all that you do. And everything that you're doing is so amazing. And a copy shipped is just an incredible work.
Thank you.